Hey there everyone, Mazarok here, and today on our Eberron Deep Dive lore, we are going to be looking at the Elven nation of Valenar. So, let's see what this warband-like of elves has in store for us today. The Elven nation of Valenar. Now, in the last war, a group of elves called the Tairnadal claimed a portion of Siri as their own. Now, this is just south of the Talenda Plains and just east of Siri. As well, if you look on the main map, it is just north of the Arenal Islands where the Irani elves are. Now, the difference between the Tairnadal elves and the Irani elves is how their source of government functions, how aggressive they are, and how they view magic and things like that. So we will be focusing on the Tairnadal elves today. Next week we'll be looking at the Irani elves and their nation. Now, the Tairnadal elves, being the wood elves of the Forgotten Realms, just repurposed and redistinguished for Eberron, you take the same stats, although it's a different culture, are very warlike. They're very aggressive. It's less the fluttery, chaotic neutralness of the elves that we know from the Forgotten Realms. Their goal and their mindset is to always be fighting a worthy foe. They're not interested in beating on the weak. They're always looking for a fight, to have that glory in that greatness of fighting and vanquishing a worthy foe. And this is the mentality the government takes, because it was formed by a group of mercenaries that splintered from Arenal at the beginning of the last war. They saw their time and place, and back in the ancient histories, the age of goblins, back when the Goblin Empire ruled over Eberron, the elves fought them fiercely and ended up being pushed back for the most part all the way to Arenal, and that's about all they got. So what they did is they claimed their ancestral right to their land during the last war, surprising Siri with a kind of a vicious democratic blow, or diplomatic blow, let's call it. So they carved out Valenar. Now, just because the elves are a warlike, the Tairnadal elves are a warlike people, and they enjoy that worthy foe, it does not mean that they rule with an iron fist. They do have quotas that they implement on every village to keep up the elf army and the elf warbands. And as long as every village meets its quota, the king and the elven army are generally keen on leaving them alone. But if they don't meet their quota, they're actually much more likely to get elven druids and rangers to go help them meet that quota and not get punished. So it's kind of like a support system. All right, what's going on with your crops? The druids show up and kind of help along with things like that. So then that way the crops will show up. They're not too keen on punishment, but try and work with that support system. So this is a very different type of nation and government that, what you're used to kind of seeing in a fantasy realm. So you can really, really play with that when you're DMing a game in Valenar. Perhaps there is a village that's just not meeting its quotas. Cursed land, and the druids of the Valenar can't figure it out. A lot of different adventure hooks and ideas that you can go there, and a lot of different ways where you can get ins with the Valenar elves. Now, one of the things the Valenar elves have been doing for some time, so with the Treaty of the Thronehold, peace has been agreed upon, although it's the Valenar elves that a lot of people suspect are going to be the first to break that treaty. And in ways, they're kind of pushing the limits on it already. They're trying to goat Karrnath into open war. They've been pushing on the boundaries of Karrnath with a few small skirmish-like war bands, because they're not really having a full force into the Talenta Plains. Putting a full army into the plains would mean an act of war. But they're pushing that limits with Karrnath. They're trying to goad them to come in and really kind of, tussle it out. And as well, they're doing that with Dargoon. The Valenar elves aren't exactly done with the Goblin invasion and empire from ages past. Yes, it was a long time ago, but elves do live an incredibly long time. and the amount of generations that it has been for them is a much smaller portion than it has been for the humans, elves, or anything like that. So they are also pushing on Dargoon to try and goad them into war. But luckily, the hobgoblins and the goblins have kept their tempers, kept their patience, and they're trying because, you know, if the goblins go into open war first, they don't have many allies. But if they can but if they're defending, see, it's a lot of diplomacy and a lot of kind of intrigue that you can work with that. Now, really, the biggest threat to Eberron is the idea of open war again because of the Morning, and nobody likes it. So this entire intrigue of trying to stop it, doing this nation by nation, or kind of perhaps plotting it, because maybe it's not a full open war. Maybe you can convince every other nation to go against one another, and Valenar would be a great place to kind of shift the tides of that, because they're a little bit more willing to move forward and press forward and just try and kind of goad people into an attack. So that is the kind of general peoples of Valenar. Now there are it is an elven rulership, but you can find most other races there as well. Most live in pretty good harmony, but that's just how it is. Now, one of the things that's been going on in Valenar is House Randar. This being the only elven nation on land. House Randar is a dragon-marked house of half-elves. They have actually invested a lot of money and a lot of infrastructure into Valenar to try and give themselves a little foothold. Now, the half-elves don't have a home of their own, and they're trying to kind of work with Valenar to really establish something there and move forward. But also, one thing to remember that we will cover a little bit more next week is that in Tairnadal, they supply the soar wood for the airships that House Randar builds. So for them building a port near a port town nearest to Tairnadal is huge. Now, they already have a monopoly on the airship business because of their dragon mark, the importance of their dragon marks and their house. Having that so nearby to Tairnadal, where they are not allowed because they are not full elves, again, cover that next week, is a hugely diplomatic centerpiece into the archstone that would be that Dragon Mark's house. So it's one of those things that gets overlooked, but when you start thinking about its importance in how it works, which we will cover later in Tairnadal and the Dragon Marked houses there, is something to think about. And something to perhaps work with when your players are exploring through there. And what is House Randar really trying to accomplish in Valenar? They have a lot of goals that I think... I have a lot of ideas for what their goals could be, but, you know, you're a DM. You got your own ideas. Work with it. But that's something to not overlook. Pilas Moradal is the second largest city in Valenar, and this is where House Randar has really kind of secured their foothold. And then you also have Moonshadow, which is a young upstart of the half-elves. So they're kind of all working together. Personally, in my campaigns, where I say they're all working together is I have House Randar secretly kind of trying to push things forward diplomatically, and that's kind of the way that I like to see it. So if that's what you kind of hear me say, it's more of a personal choice, but whether you want to link it in together or not, that's your choice. The capital of Valenar is Tairnadal. Now, that's the way I pronounce it. I am terribly sorry if I butcher it. The High King Vidalia sits there as well, and this is where you can easily find fighting pits for training and the horses. So Valenar can also be viewed as kind of like the Rohan of Eberron, where the elves are actually the best cavalry in Corvair by far. So that's where they train with some of their Fey-touch beasts, some of their horses, and really work out with these big arena-style training centers that they have there. And this is Tairnadal is located in the center of Valenar, and that's kind of the big main cities that you have there. Aside from that, it's really peppered with a lot of villages. And lastly, as a DM note, the elven territory of Valenar is peppered with old elven ruins and goblinoid ruins from the ancient war that happened. So if you were looking for a spot for an elven or a goblin like dungeon crawl, Valenar I think would be a great place to do it. You can kind of go back to your Oblivion days and have like an underground elven ruin that they're exploring, or you can go, you know, a more classic route with the goblin ones if you'd like. Really your choice, but that's just a fun little thing that, you know, I would personally pepper in there, because sometimes a good dungeon crawl is just, well, it's needed in a campaign. Aside from that, I stream on Twitch every Tuesday, Thursday, and Saturday, and every Sunday, my apologies, at 7 p.m. Eastern, we are running the Rime of the Frostmaiden campaign. It has been a lot of fun. Come by and see that. If you're looking for any dice bags, masks, or anything like that, check the Etsy down below. Everything goes towards helping us, you know, a father stay at home with his kids more. So, aside from that, we go from there, and I really do hope you guys have yourselves a great day, and your next session's a good one. Thank you very much.